And it makes my classes look like, this being purpose, like linguistic purpose, not just, teaching content. Which so that's where I think I've made it. That's where I've made it big improvements and big steps forward. Is that now I'm sort of looking at the language analysis, being able to teach language.
Yeah, I mean that was very evident. I thought in your last lesson, TP7. Actually, we don't always structure it so that the trainer you have at the beginning of the course comes back and watches you at the end of the course. It's not always possible, but when we can, like we have on this course, and we were forced to actually because I had this annual leave booked. It's actually really nice because I do get to see your progress. Quite often I would watch your first 4 lessons and somebody else would watch the final 4. But this way it's really nice to see how much progress you have all made on the course. I think everybody's making really good progress and it's good to see. And yeah, in terms of your TP7, there was a very obvious language section in your lesson, and there was some obvious analysis of that in both the plan and then clarification with the students. So I thought it was great to see that. Then also in terms of that, I think you've been working well in refining receptive skills procedures. So they were all there in place with task before text and pair checks and stuff. So I think it was a good lesson, a nice lesson. In terms of self-evaluation, I'm just looking here. So so you've raised the question about feedback to the reading task, right? Getting in your self-evaluation, you asked for advice on feedback to the reading task. How did you think the feedback went to that reading task?
Well, this is the thing. The first reading for gist went fairly smooth, but then the reading for detail, I got absolutely just thrown right off. I asked a question to the group: is anyone confident that they know the answer to this? And a guy puts his hand up, and he was one of the Vietnamese guys. We had to, and he had it. He answered it absolutely perfectly with clear, with confidence. But I couldn't understand a word he said. He just had this accent that just threw me for 6. I couldn't catch what he was saying. Because he so confidently answered, I was like, what do I do here? So I was gonna say, did you understand what he said next to him? Did you catch that?
Yeah.
Same answer. Okay, you repeat that to me to get someone else.
Yeah.
I was just totally thrown. He looked like a fairly like a good guy. I've never actually seen him before. I might have got him the week before, but he threw me, absolutely threw me, and I couldn't get what his answer was.
Yeah. Had you not had any feedback from him before then? Had that been the first time you heard it? Is he a new student or?
I drove him. He sat next to me in the car. He's one of the students at my university. He put his headphones on. He doesn't talk to anyone.
Yeah.
He's clever guy that's a little bit introverted. When he answers, that he'll have the answer. He's a clever guy, don't get me wrong. But you don't know what he sounds like because he doesn't talk so often,
Yeah.
Like I was with him for an hour beforehand.
And he sat in the car with his headphones on?
He sat next to me in the car and he put his headphones on.
Wow.
And so I drove him. He was right there.
God, if I was a student and I was in the car with my teacher for an hour, I would seize that opportunity to, as one of my students said to me recently to milk you dry for as much as I could get out of you in that 1 hour. The last thing I'd do is put some headphones on and remove the possibility to practice my language with you.
And the other guys, because I had 4 of them in the car going there, and the other 3 were just completely engaged in conversation.
Okay, yeah.
And this guy,
How did you find his pronunciation, Scott? It's hard for me to pick up, to be honest.
Yeah, I know the guy you're talking about. It's. I think in general the Vietnamese, they do. It's sometimes difficult to pick out what they're saying. They don't enunciate so well some words. But I don't recall having like a particular problem.
I think,
but maybe I didn't nominate him to like.
I mean, I think given his reticence to speak in the car, I would probably avoid nominating him for feedback in future lessons, simply because it's kind of suggests that he's uncomfortable with that, and maybe it's because he's aware of his own pronunciation issues, and so I would probably avoid that. And obviously, one thing, I mean, nominating is obviously really important, and we've encouraged you to do that on the course, so that there's a equal opportunity for students to contribute in the open class stages. But if a student is incomprehensible, or their own personality means that they don't like contributing in open class, then I would avoid it. That's always something you can put on an anticipated problem in your lesson plan. Such and such is reluctant to give feedback to the whole class, so avoid nomination and so forth. But that was a point to think about, actually, about nominating and knowing who to nominate, and that, because obviously the when students are engaged on tasks and activities in pair work or group work, that's your time to go round and see how the students are doing, look at if there's any gaps in their knowledge in any way, look at who's got the answers, and it's that monitoring that is the time where you can think, right, okay, when I do feedback, then I know that this person's got the answer. I know that student is quite a confident student, and so is going to be quite happy to give feedback. And so I'm going to ask that student for that answer, and so forth. So monitoring's key there, really, to so you get the information you need to know to who to monitor, to nominate and feedback. And I think maybe was it his first lesson, this guy, or?
No, I think he came the previous.
He might have come the week before.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
In terms of strategies for dealing with students that say things that you can't understand, it's not an easy situation to manage, really. I mean, if it's a short answer and it's not a persistent problem, then I would just say, oh, could you say that again? Or could you say that a bit more loudly, or so forth. But if it's somebody who has issues with their pronunciation, and that's an ongoing thing, then yeah, I would just avoid nominating them, because there's a good chance that the other students might struggle to understand. Hopefully, when they're working in pairs, they can make themselves understood when they're working in pairs and groups. Because otherwise, if they're not, then there may be a level issue here. There may be some kind of issue where we might have to look at the fact that he's not maybe at the right level for this group.
I think he's fine, because I had him working with in the pair, and he seemed to be. They work quite well, actually. They were one of the stronger pairs. So I think, as Anthony said, he's actually really, really quite good. But it tends to be the case because his Vietnamese friend as well, is very confident, but sometimes he'll say something and you don't really can't really catch it because he's so confident. He says it so quickly, but sometimes the word stress is wrong or something like that, so you can't really catch it first time.
Yeah. Maybe try and engage him in the car, Anthony. So you tell him so you can get used to his pronunciation.
I actually did do a thing. I even tried to do a tongue twister. I even tried to do a Peter Piper pick the peck of pickled peppers just to hear him. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
So a couple of just anything just to kind of like get him to. And he just had his headphones on, and his buddy, the other guy, Lamb, he's like a absolute people person and talks to everyone and shaking everybody's hand. And this guy's the exact opposite, polar opposite. So it's they're like a little comedy,
Yeah.
And they're really interesting students.
Yeah. No, they seem like a really nice group. Yeah. Have you? In my feedback, I linked to a document. Did you have a chance to look at that, Anthony? Did you see the link? It was a document called Lesson Shapes document.
It's called what? Lesson Shapes.
So if you look at my overall feedback under planning and procedure, I've included a link there called Lesson Shapes document.
Is that at the top?
Yeah.
I think it's
on the first sheet.
At the bottom.
Lesson shape document. Okay. Wait, it doesn't open.
You need to press.
Is it opening?
Unfortunately, I don't seem to be getting it.
Sometimes you click on it and then it opens up on the link and you might have to click on the link.
Right. Okay, reload it. Okay, let me go back to the other one.
It's actually, I mean, are you signed into Fronter there as well? Because if you go to the forums and I also linked to it in the forums under, I think I put it under general discussion. General discussion forum. Lesson aims and stage aims. There's a post right at the end. Lesson aims and stage aims.
Okay, so it's under general discussion forum. Sorry.
Yeah. My final post, lesson aims and stage aims. If you go into that, there's a link to a document.
Lesson shapes.
That's it.
And stage aims. Okay.
Have you seen that before? Have you seen it before, Scott?
No, this is the first time for me. So yeah,
Okay. I thought I'd posted it before I went on leave, but perhaps I hadn't. So it's a document here that you can use because I mean all of the information is actually in the course units. It's just that it's often hard to find. But this is a document you can use to help look at the staging for lessons, but also for looking at your lesson aim, your main aim, and also your stage aims. So, for example, you kind of had a receptive skills lesson. So yours was kind of like lesson shape C. And then there's a number of possible stages there. You would never do all of those stages, or it's unlikely that you would do all of them. But you would probably do some of those. And so in terms of writing the lesson plan, you can almost cut and paste the stage name and the stage aim if you're doing an activity relates to that. because that was something that was missing slightly from your your last plan. The aims still need a little bit of work. There were some aims there, but there were some missing, and some of them weren't quite right. So maybe refer to that, and that will help you with writing the lesson plan for TP8.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I say, you can if you're doing an activity that relates to any of those stage names and aims, you can more or less cut and paste the wording, and yeah, hopefully that will also help in terms of the order of activities and so forth. So the only other real thing really was to go back to the question about feedback to detailed reading. The only thing perhaps you could have done as well is maybe have had I think you said in your self-evaluation a larger copy of the text, or maybe having the text projected onto the board, so you can then when you're getting feedback, you can ask students to say where the answer is. I think it's always a good idea when you're setting reading tasks to encourage students to underline the parts of the text where they can find the answer, and then when you get feedback, you can say, "So where was the text?" and where was the answer, and you can underline it on the board for all the students to see. That's if you've got access to that technology, which I think you seem to have. You've got some kind of projector there, haven't you?
We don't have a projector at Rideau.
I think Malcolm can get one, because I'm going to use one.
Oh, right.
I've seen Andrew using projecting stuff. So,
but if we could use one, I've always got a projector in every class.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Ask Malcolm. You're probably not going to do a reading lesson again now, but that's one thing you could do in future things. The only other thing to think about with that lesson was keeping an eye on timing and pace, because I think that did drop a little bit, and you ended up kind of running out of time a little bit towards the end. I think around the detailed reading task, I think maybe you could have got them into pairs a little bit more quickly. Given that it was quite a short text and they've already read the text once anyway, you can say, okay, so read it and read these questions, and only give them a minute or two and say, right, okay, now start working together, so they can start looking at answering the questions together, and just add a little bit more pace there, I think, and then that would have given you a little bit more time for the language focus that came after that. But yeah, on the whole, I thought it was a good lesson for TP7. It really kind of, as I said before, reflected where the progress you've been making on the course. So really encouraging. Did you have any other questions about that, Anthony?
Just at the end, just one small thing. At the end, I did a revision.
Yeah.
Which I was weighing up whether to do the good and bad language analysis at the end.
Yeah.
But I thought that in the preparation, I thought that because it's a reading activity and they're just getting the answers, that there won't be so much conversation, so there won't be so much language to correct.
Right. Okay.
I thought. So that's why I decided to do a revision and go back again and, so for the last 5 minutes, go over everything again.
Right, yeah. That's not a bad thing to do, to be honest. But if possible, get that. If you get that final speaking activity in, which didn't really happen, I don't think. You didn't have time for the final speaking task, did you?
No, I went through everyone and just asked everybody a personal question to finish about.
So you've got a call to make, basically, haven't you? If you've run out of time, then there's still a few minutes. Then doing a bit of review is not a bad idea, really, is it? So well done, Scott. How how did you? I mean, I'm looking at your obviously. I don't know if you've seen my comments on your self-evaluation, by the way. But...
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't reply because I thought we can talk about it now.
Yeah, yeah.
So the comment about not doing a controlled practice. The rationale for that was just a timing issue. Really, I wanted to get them speaking, and that would have given me more opportunities to pick up language to focus on at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was very conscious of time. So yeah, that was the reason. And I thought having them work in pairs where they can be a bit more creative, making their questions would make it a bit more communicative and engaging. So
yeah,
that was the reason for that.
Yeah, fair enough. The only reason I raised the question really is because it's quite complex language and it's quite both in terms of meaning and in form. It's quite difficult to be able to.
They did struggle. Some of them did struggle to come up with some questions. So, in hindsight, yeah, it might have been beneficial to do a bit of controlled practice beforehand. But
yeah. I mean, if you look at the task in the book, just trying to remember where it was now. It was Unit 7, 8?
59, page 59.
59. I mean, this is being really kind of like analytical of what the task in the book is. One of those tasks where it involves controlled practice in that the students have to use the language that you've taught, and then by completing the gap fill, and then the sentences then provide a springboard for speaking activity and responding to them. Obviously, the task in the book is more controlled. Even the speaking part is more controlled because it's then a case of just responding to some sentences. But you could argue there's more scaffolding in there and there's a more chance that they're going to use the target language. But it all depends on the class really, and it also, you know, in future lessons it also depends on the complexity of the language. But yeah, I don't think it was particularly a problem with your group. I just think it's something to, you know, worth thinking about and something to discuss. The only other thing, or one of the only other things that I put in my feedback really was about the procedure for doing Lexis. Did you understand what I was trying to get at by getting when you're doing feedback, if you focus on the meaning and get students to give you the target language?
No, could you elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah. So you had a task where you had those really nicely contextualized uses. By the way, I thought not only did you use the material or, you know, adapt the course book really well, because you basically redesigned the lesson just choosing the Lexis, but also the Lexis you chose was, I thought, useful and relevant, because there's some things there that perhaps you might not have wanted to teach in that lesson. So yeah, when you've got a Lexis task where students have got some contextualized examples of the target language and they're matching the target language to meanings or synonyms. When you're getting feedback for that, I always think it's a good idea to start from the meaning, or, you know, so you say, okay, number one, and you have the synonym or the definition, and students give you the target language, because that gives you another opportunity then to check their pronunciation. Therefore, because if they say come down with, or come down with, or, I mean, to be honest, with this particular Lexis, it probably doesn't make an awful lot of difference. But if they say things, you know, but if there's any mispronunciations, if you're integrating your pronunciation work into feedback, you know, okay, this is a great opportunity now to then help the class with the pronunciation. I mean, you had a guided discovery pronunciation task, which is, equally valid, is to integrate in your pronunciation work there. But at least you would have then known, right, okay, this is something that they might be having a problem with. So when I do feedback to the pronunciation task, I'll do a little bit more work, maybe drill this, etc., do some correction work. So I just think it means that it enables you to be a little bit more responsive to any problems that the students are having.
Yeah. Okay.
But otherwise, it was a really, really good lesson, and really effective lesson, and the students clearly enjoyed it. Choice of topic was great. I really enjoyed watching it. Pretty well done. So, did you have any other questions before we move on to TP 8? You don't obviously have to have questions.
Oh, and you were saying with doing the pronunciation, maybe doing it as a sentence is more beneficial for them rather than just the little.
I think with phrases like that, phrasal verbs, phrases, I think it's useful for them to hear how and it doesn't have to be a whole sentence. But a part of the sentence, like, imagine you had this example. I'm looking here in front of me here. Would you like to come round for dinner this weekend? You could just say, would you like to come round for dinner? And just say, okay, come round, and come round for dinner, and look at it that way, just to show how it's said in the sentence. But again, it's a minor point really, and I didn't even put it as an area to work on. So, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Okay, should we have a look at TP8 then?
Yeah.
Anthony, your TP8 is not going to come for. You've got 2 weeks now to prepare for TP8. But we should still be able to talk about it, and I'll have a little run through with Luke's lesson, so he can watch this video, and we can talk about his lesson with.
When you said it was Unit 13, you meant Unit 13 from the book?
Yes.
Right. I just want to make sure I got Unit 13 from the book.
Oh, I see. Yeah, no. You've got that unit to choose from. But actually, I'm looking back a little bit, because just looking at your spread of lessons, your portfolio, you taught a grammar lesson in TP3. But you haven't taught a grammar lesson since. You've taught quite a lot of lexis, which is great, and some functional language. But I'm wondering if maybe it'd be a good idea to teach a grammar lesson in TP8.
Yeah, grammar. Okay.
And I've been looking back through the book actually, and as far as I know, nobody has done the grammar from Unit 8. I've been trying to look. I've looked back through the TP points, and I don't think I could find. I don't think anybody did. I'm just looking again. It's conditional, so it's quite a nice grammar point to teach.
Okay. Unit 8.
I did conditionals.
Did you do conditionals at the lower level though?
Oh, is this speculating?
Oh no, I didn't do those. Okay.
No.
Okay. This is 1 and 2 for grammar conditionals past and present.
That's it, yeah. So I'm wondering if maybe that might be. I know going back in the book, and that unit's probably been assigned to somebody, but
I think with
I don't think that. No, well, actually, I don't think they're going to use that, because I've spoken to Shelley. Was using Unit 8. No, there's Unit 8. Yeah. And it kind of sits alone. It's talking about life events. So the grammar is contextualized by the listening on page 64. So there's going to be main aim would be grammar and sub aim would be listening plus speaking, probably. Just looking at the tape script.
Okay, so there'll be 1, 2, pronunciation. Is that number 3? Does that go in as speaking, or
which one's that? Sorry.
So if I look on page 65,
yeah,
it's got grammar number 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And it's got grammar references and practice on page 137.
Yeah.
And then number 3 is pronunciation.
Yeah.
And number 4 is speaking.
Yeah. So I'm gonna add to the. I don't know if you've got the TP points document open there actually, but I'm gonna add to this now, so just so we know what everybody's doing. So I'm gonna put main grammar and listening. Does this, before I do this actually, does this sound like a good choice? What do you think?
Yeah, it sounds like a really good choice because I'm happy to work on grammar activities. That's something that, like it gives me 2 weeks to put something together, and I'd like to give it a go.
Okay. Well, I'll continue filling in this in then. So we're looking at Unit 8, page 64 to 65. And so, in terms of that lesson shapes, in terms of that lesson shapes document,
yep.
You'll be doing lesson shape A. So you can select from those stage names and stage aims, and also your main lesson aim might read something like, by the end of the lesson, students will be better able to understand and use conditionals to past and present conditionals in the context of significant points in people's lives, or to talk about significant, we'll be better able to understand and use conditionals past and present to talk about significant points in people's lives. Something along those lines. I mean, obviously, I'm making this up as we speak, but looking a little bit more detail into the content. But that's more or less what your aim would be. Sub aim would be students will have developed their listening for, and then you state what sub skills they use. Okay, so you would probably start off with a lead in, which could be exercise 1. Exercise 2. And then that becomes a listening task.
Exercise 3? Is that? Oh, sorry. Are you
Probably there for them.
So leading, you're saying go to page 64.
Yeah, because the grammar that you're teaching is all contextualized by these listening tasks. Now I'm thinking I'm thinking that you might only do, to give you enough time, you might only do one listening task. So maybe exercise 2 and not do 3. So they would look at the pictures and they have to then listen to say what the pictures represent. So that way they're processing the listening for understanding.
Okay.
And then you can move on to page 65. And this is a guided discovery task then. And I would let students do exercise 1. And at feedback to exercise 1, I'd expect probably to see these sentences on the board so that you can, and I'd expect you to be using some concept check questions to supplement the guided discovery task. You've got three different forms there. You've got basically if plus had plus modal verb. You've got mixed conditional, which is C, and you've got D, which is using a continuous verb form. You might want to reduce that somewhat, perhaps.
Reduce the amount of grammar that I'm teaching. It's too many grammar points.
Yeah, maybe remove the ing form or the mixed conditional. Have you heard of mixed conditionals before?
Mixed conditional. Okay.
Have you? So mixed conditional is when you're talking about how something in the past has an impact on the present. So, for example, if I hadn't seen the head teacher, my life would be completely different. So it would be completely different now. I hadn't seen my teachers in the past. So you'll need to select there. Or definitely do A and B, and then either C or D. But because you're reducing it, if you then do some controlled practice, and you've got some practice on page 137.
Yep.
You would have to make sure that the sentences you have there only practice what you've taught. So, for example, if you remove C, which is the mixed conditional, make sure you don't then provide control practice on the mixed conditional. If you want to do the pronunciation task exercise 3, you can, or you can integrate this into your feedback to exercise 1 of the grammar. So when you've got these model sentences on the board, you can be you could be doing some pronunciation work there by doing some drilling, listing of stress, etc. It's up to you. I think it'd be more time efficient to do it that way. And then you need some kind of fluency, some freer practice, if you like. I'm just looking at the materials here, and I'm also looking at the additional resources.
So in free practice, that's where the students just start giving their own opinion.
Yeah. I mean, you could develop exercise 4A possibly. But you'll just need to make sure that it's structured enough that students will use the conditionals that you teach. I mean, actually, just thinking, I've mentioned that controlled practice task, but I think actually, rather than doing the controlled practice task, I think 2A is fine.
Okay.
Rather do 2A than the one from the back of the book. I think that's fine, actually.
Okay, so 2A and leave 137 out.
Yeah. Because it's more in, it continues with the same context, and it does give the students a fairly controlled, I mean, it's kind of semi-controlled practice, which is really nice, actually, I think. So just in terms of practice, then some productive practice. Yeah, I mean, maybe we develop 4. I'll have a little look as well to see. You've got a couple of weeks for this lesson, so well, actually a week, but but yeah, I'll have a look as well, see if I can suggest something for you. Maybe it's something like a board game or something like that, where they use conditionals or past and present. Yeah.
Yep.
Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Obviously, what you're going to have to be really careful of is because grammar's your main aim here. You've got 60 minutes. In terms of timing, you want to be looking at trying to get to exercise 1A of grammar on page 65 within about 20 minutes of the lesson. So you've then got 40 minutes of your lesson to look at the grammar. That's the main reason, really, why I've suggested you only do one listening task. And in terms of staging and lesson shapes, so I'm looking at the document that I've linked to here now. So you've got a lead in, then you've got listening for gist, maybe, or listening for detail, whichever you decide it to be, and they do exercise 2. And then you've got clarifying target language to enable students to understand the meaningful and pronunciation of the target language, and that would be the stage aim and stage for exercise 1. Yeah, this one. And then exercise 2A would be controlled practice to give students confidence using the target language, etc., etc. And then your productive task would be freer practice to enable students to use the target language in a freer, meaningful, and communicative way. So those, in looking at that lesson shape there, those are you've got lead in, listening 1, clarifying language or controlled practice, freer practice, and then hopefully emerging language or dealing feedback on language. So you've got 6 stages in your lesson. Don't let your lead in be more than 5 minutes. Don't spend too long on the listening, because although it's a sub-aim, developing listening skills, really your main focus is the grammar. Have you got any questions about that? I mean, you probably need to go away and digest that a little bit.
Yeah, I'll probably go through it and write it up. Is it possible that I could send you my? Could I send you my lesson plan and just?
Not in theory, really, you because it's the final lesson of the course. You need to be showing independence or some independence. I'm happy. I think if you've got questions, I think it would be a good idea to write specific questions, send those to me, and I'll respond to those. But I can't really look at lesson plans for TPA.
That's fine. So I'm pretty comfortable with that, and I like the lesson shape. That seems quite reasonable, and I'll try to get through lead-in, listening for gist, focus on and then move across to the target language and try to get onto grammar.
Okay.
And so that needs to be done within 20 minutes.
Yeah. So 5-minute lead-in. Yeah. 5-minute lead-in. Then maybe 10 minutes for the listening task, and you're there. You're almost then ready to move on to the grammar. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. There's 3 individual texts there, 3 individual listenings. You may find that you might only need to use 2 of them. I mean, it all depends where this language comes from. I mean, for example, imagine sentence D comes from listening 3, and you decide not to do exercise number D, the sentence, if my company hadn't decided to move, I'd probably still be doing the same job. Imagine you decide not to do that, then you could remove that text, so you've only got 2 texts then. The key thing to remember when you're planning this lesson is that the listening is there to contextualise the language. Okay. Your main focus is to get students using that language and learning about that language and using that language. Scott, do you want to talk about your lesson? Thanks for posting an outline and the link to the video. It looks like a very. Have you got the CP points open there? I mean, it doesn't matter anyway. But it looks like a very sensible approach and a very logical series of stages.
Yeah, the thing I'm kind of umming and ahhing about is the pre-teaching of lexis. So I've got two ideas. One is, I'll do a lead in like some kind of personalized, how do you study English or something like that, and they can talk to each other, and then maybe write the title of the video, how to become fluent.
Yeah.
And then we can kind of predict what strategies they think that are going to come up in the video.
Yeah.
Then we watch the video, and that will be the gist task to see if any of their ideas come up. And then we can go into the detailed listening and then an extension speaking activity. That's one possible way. The other way is I could provide, so I'll write how to and then leave dots, like dot, 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 dot. And then I'll write because it's broken down into steps, the video is, then I write the different steps in a random order, like take a group class, immerse yourself, imitate, and all the different, I think there's 6. And then they can work in pairs and they try and figure out what the link is, how to what, and see if they can figure it out from the steps.
Yeah.
And then it's a good opportunity to pre-teach if there's any words they don't know. I can say, if you don't know any words, you can look them up in a dictionary, or we could go through them together. and then kind of go in that way.
Right. Okay. What was your first task suggestion again? Just run that by me again. The first task in the your first option, I should say, not first task.
The first one is like a personalised question, like how do you? I don't know. I'm not sure. Like, do you studying English or something like that, just to get them thinking about studying a language. Then a prediction. So I write the title of the video, "How to Become Fluent in a Language."
Yeah.
And then they have to, in pairs, come up with strategies they think are good to become fluent.
Yeah.
Then we do a gist listening where they see if their predictions are mentioned in the video. And then we'll go into a detailed listening. And then
which one are you leaning towards, do you think?
Well, just looking now, I think I don't think the language is too difficult. So I'm thinking maybe if there are maybe post-teach difficult lexis.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I preferred the option where you get them to think of tips themselves and then listen to compare a prediction task, because they're going to have. It seems to me that they're going to have ideas about how best to learn a language because they're language learners. So it seems to me that would be a nice opportunity for them to share their ideas. And that therefore then seems to make a really nice prediction task. But what you would need to think about then is how you organise that. Do you get their ideas and put them on the board and then let them listen? So then when you get feedback, you can say, right, okay, and you can do, get them to compare, do your normal procedures, if you like, get them to compare, and then say, okay, let's go through which of these ones were mentioned. And then there are going to be some there probably which they won't predict, which is nice. And when it comes for you for designing your detailed task, maybe that's where that comes in. You can maybe weight it a little bit towards the ideas that you predict they won't come up with, if there are any. The problem I saw, or I thought there may be with your other alternative, where they put them in order, was that there would possibly be quite a bit of reading there, and the level of I watched the video earlier, and I thought the level of the video, the challenge there for those group of learners was probably about right. And if you start giving them lots of parts of it that's already written, it removes challenge because they're reading instead of listening, and maybe that might make it a little bit too easy for them in terms of challenge.
It's a video, so they got the visual, also got the visual kind of top-down processing that they can do just from the images can help with their comprehension.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not just a listening to a CD, they're actually seeing images that kind of support what's being said.
Yeah. So they don't. That's what I mean. So if you gave them the main points in a written form that they have to listen to, that to me would make it a little bit under challenging for them.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think the prediction task is nice. It's a more natural type of task anyway. It's it's the sort of thing that you would encourage students to do as an exam technique, for example. Okay, you're going to listen to this. First of all, predict what you're going to hear, because that's going to. So it's a more natural task type, and it's also one that would support them if they were going to go, or if they're doing any exams in English, any listening exams in English, or it's a good thing to focus on. So I would go for that one personally.
Okay.
In terms of language, I mean, I'm not a big fan actually of pre-teaching lectures. Yeah, if there's anything that can come out of the prediction task before they listen, then yeah, by all means, feed it in. You know, if they're trying to describe a strategy that is in the listening, but they're not using the lexis, you can say, okay, and what do we call that? Okay, yeah, it's, and you give them the language for it. But it's, you know, you're trying to walk a fine line between challenge and not making it too easy, basically. So don't feel that you have to pre-teach Lexis, and don't. I mean, the only reason I've added here post-teach is normally for 1 hour lessons, we like to see teachers do some language work, even though it's a receptive skills lesson. But that doesn't, and so normally we'd encourage either a pre-teach or a post-teach. But I feel that you have enough awareness, Scott, that you could still do some language work in the overall feedback task. So we're in the feedback to the final speaking task, the final follow-up task. You know, with an hour, you should probably have enough time to spend 10 minutes there. So you're teaching reactively to the problems that a student have, rather than proactively in anticipating the problems that they have.
So that was something. So I mentioned possibly doing like a pyramid discussion. So I was thinking, oh, should I pre-teach them like functional language for agreeing, disagreeing, and stuff like that? But then I thought maybe it's better I don't. And if that's a problem, then that's something I can focus on. Like, oh, what's a good way? Yeah. Or if they say it too bluntly, I could write that up and say, oh, how can we say this like, more politely or something?
I don't think you'd have time, really, would you? I mean, I think just thinking about your pyramid discussion, I think it's a great idea. I'm just a little bit concerned that the topic doesn't lend itself to it. I mean, how many tips are there for learning a language?
I think there's 7.
And they may have 1 or 2 of their own from the prediction task as well to add to that. So let's say they had 8, and then the pyramid task is to choose the 2 most effective. So let's try and do it together. So imagine I choose use a learner dictionary and mimic competent users. You choose 2 more.
Okay, watch movies and take a class.
Okay, so we now have to decide out of those 4 which are the best 2. So we'd have a discussion, and we might come up with watching movies. What was your other one?
Take a class.
Watching movies and take a class. So those are our 2. Meanwhile, another 2 pairs have come up with the same 2 because they're obviously the best ones. When you bring the 4 together, if that's how you're thinking about arranging it, they've got nowhere to go because it may be that people have the same ideas.
Well, then we could just do maybe just a mingle again. Is like they can still choose their top 2, and then if they've got the same, then it doesn't.
Yeah, I'm not. Don't rule out. Do you see where my concern comes from?
I do.
I don't want to put obstacles in your way if you feel it can work. And
no, well, this is just like ideas. I haven't really got down into thinking about the practicalities.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could think of
just the top one, like the top 1. Then there's more possibility of differences.
But then there's less communication in reaching that top 1. Well, no, ranking. That's it. Ranking. Do it as a ranking. You've got 8 things, and you have to rank them in number 1 to 8. Number 1 the best, number 8 the least. And then, so they do that on their own. Then they work in pairs and say, right, compare rankings. Why have you got them in that order? Now you have to decide on the same order. And then you say, right, okay, now work together another pair, compare. And again, you will probably have different orders. But you need to convince the other that your order is correct, is the best order. That would work better. So in actual, rather than limiting to 1, it's better to have all of them. And so it's a ranking task.
Okay.
That would work, I think.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Feel free to email me with any questions that you have, although I'm confident that you're probably going to be able to sort it out anyway.
Yeah, I think I've got the main idea of what I want to do, so it should be all right.
Okay. I just needed to run through some stuff for Luke, actually, about his lesson. Then I could have a quick word with you, Anthony, about assignment 3. Yeah? Or maybe I'll talk about your assignment 3 now, because then everything that relates to Luke comes at the end of the video, and so you can locate it more easily. Unfortunately, you have got a resubmission. Sorry. You've obviously done loads of really good reading, background reading, and you've used your sources well. You've got a good understanding of top-down processing and bottom-up processing, and so forth. And you're on in terms of the tasks that you've designed. You're kind of getting on the right lines. However, in a few places you kind of make reference to listening skills, which you need to avoid because this is only a reading skills task. I mean, you could have done a listening task, but then it would be only listening rather than both. So you need to remove any reference to listening skills. Your gist task is on the right lines, but you need to be a little bit more careful about the wording of the questions so that they all involve students reading the text. So, for example, you've got your final 2 questions. Have famous people visited Covent Garden? And is this a popular place for people to visit? I think people could probably guess the answers to that if they didn't know the answer. Maybe I'm being a bit mean here, though, because maybe Japanese students don't have any knowledge of Covent Garden. Have famous people visited Covent Garden? Do you think a Japanese student could answer that without reading?
No, not necessarily. I don't think they would because, I don't think, in my experience.
Okay, and is it a popular place for people to visit? Okay, in fact, listen, let's scrap that. Actually, that's a relief. I'm glad to be doing that. Let's so scrap what I've said about your gist task. But with the reading the detail task, there is a slight problem here, particularly because it's for upper intermediate students. You've got 5 questions, 5 WH questions, and you've effectively argued your rationale for using WH questions rather than true or false. Although I do think that you can still write good true or false questions for more advanced students. The problem with some of your questions is exercise question 3, for example. What did Charles Dickens say about it? All the students have to do to answer that question is find Charles Dickens in the text and then write the quote that's in the text. It doesn't develop their understanding of the text at all. Activity question number 4 is okay. Question number 5: if you saw a famous person in Covent Garden, would you ask for their autograph? You don't need to read the text at all for that question because it's an opinion question. So if you remove those those problematic questions, that only leaves you with 3 WH questions for the whole text, which isn't really enough to exploit that length of text with an upper intermediate group of learners. So you basically need to remove those questions and add some more. I would expect probably 6, 7, 8 questions for that sort of length text. And then the speaking task, I mean, it's good that you've included some language there, some functional language, but again, that's not an aim of this assignment. So you need to remove any reference to vocabulary or functional language, etc. And then the speaking task itself, I think you need to revise. I mean, I've written all this on my feedback on the assignment itself, but I thought it'd be useful to talk about it as well because sometimes it's a little bit difficult to put onto paper how best to go about this. So the speaking task itself, nice role play that you've designed, but I'm not sure that you've scripted a role play that I guess you want the students to practice. Not sure that's challenging enough for upper intermediate students to just read a role play and practice the role play. Is that what you wanted the students to do?
I wanted to give them an example of what a role play looks like and then get them to do their own role play. So that's kind of like a step. So here's using the dialogue from the reading task, use that, make a role play, here's an example, and now you go and make your own one.
Yeah, again, I'm not convinced that text lends itself to a role play. It's a text that gives you the history and information about Covent Garden. So it's kind of like a famous tourist attraction, if you like, in London. I'm not convinced that if a role play, I'm not convinced that the way you've structured it, that the role play works, because there isn't really a task. You've given them an example, but looking at the activity, if I was a student, I wouldn't really know what you wanted me to do. I know you've said, okay, you're a husband and wife on holiday who wants to go shopping, but then where does our conversation go? Do you see what I mean? Let's do it now. Let's do it now. You and I, we're students. We just read about the Covent Garden. I'm your wife. Sorry. So I'd be trying to convince you to go to Covent Garden and what you could do there. So it's a guide. And you'd be looking at maybe doing shopping and going to all of those like activities and entertainment, where I'm looking at. Well, I'd say come on, honey, let's go shopping. I want to go and buy myself some new shoes. Bit stereotypical as well, mind you. Come on, honey, I want to go and buy some shoes.
I was looking to go down to some of the bars down there. Look all right.
Where's this? Down where?
Down at Covent Garden, where you could. There was a few different bars, good bars down there.
Okay, well, I tell you what. Let's go to Covent Garden. You go to the bars, and I'll do some shopping. There's some lovely shops there.
Well, that worked for me. That's not a bad idea at all.
It hasn't really gone anywhere because there isn't enough structure in your task. If you want to do a role play, you have to. It needs to be much more structured in order for it to go anywhere. You have to. This is maybe have 2 role cards. You don't want to. Your husband's going to suggest that go to Covent Garden to Do you see what I mean? It means much. But again, I'm still not convinced that that's appropriate for that group of learners as a response to that text. Perhaps a more suitable thing would be, would you like to visit, now that you know this about Covent Garden, would you like to visit Covent Garden? Have you been to Covent Garden? Why would you like to? And then open it up more to maybe get them talking about tourist attractions in Japan. You could do a pyramid discussion if you wanted to. You could get them. Maybe coming up with a list of tourist attractions to go to in their city, and then they have to put them in order. Or there needs to be a little bit more there, and it needs to be, I think, a little bit more engaging for that group of learners. Can you see where I'm coming from there?
Yeah. Okay.
I'll send that to you in a bit. Anyway, I mean, what time are you there now? You're getting quite late there, aren't you? What time is it?
At night.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I'll get that. I'll send it to you tomorrow, later today, actually. So you've got my verbal feedback as well as the written feedback.
And so with it, it's not everything I changed. It's just those couple of questions, reading for detail, and the with the task.
Yeah.
The task that goes.
Yeah. So refining some of the. I think you can. I'm going to remove that now. The gist task is fine. We're going to keep the gist task. It's just remove reference to listening, refine your detailed task, and remove reference to any language focus, and refine the speaking task. When you resubmit this assignment, just add to this document. So you resubmit the same document but with additions. Yeah.
Okay.
And you can just email it to me. I've put a deadline for that for resubmission for the 26th, which is next week, isn't it?
Okay.
But I mean, if you can get it in sooner, obviously do.
Yeah.
So apologies for being the bearer of bad news.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm gonna record a bit now. I'm wondering if I'm gonna go through quickly go through Luke's lesson now. I don't know if you can disappear or. I guess not. One of you has to switch the computer off. Maybe I'll just record a little video for him later, actually, or tomorrow, to talk about his lesson. That might be easier. Do a separate video. Yeah. All right. All right. Well, have a good weekend. You look a bit despondent, Anthony. Sorry.
I put a lot of work in for that lesson, actually.
I can tell. No, I mean, I can tell. It's like I say, the background reading you've done is really good, and the referencing and your generally your use of terminology in certain parts is good. You do need to be a little bit careful in other places. So, for example, just check. Whenever you've put something like subskill, check that you're using that correctly, because you've got, for example, where is it? It's in the task. So for example, Appendix 6, task for general understanding of the story, you've got subskill listening. Now, obviously, there shouldn't be any listening work in the. Although there may be some kind of incidental listening work because students are talking to each other and to you and so forth. It's not really an aim of this assignment. I'm just adding to my notes on this now, and then also you've got step 2, sub-skill speaking. Now, speaking isn't a sub-skill, speaking is a skill. You've got 4 skills: reading, writing, speaking, listening. And then those skills are divided into sub-skills. So it might be speaking for detail, speaking for accuracy, etc., speaking to da-da-da-da. So you need to remove reference to sub-skill there. But like I say, yeah, I mean, it's clear that you put a lot of work into it, and I don't think it'd take too much to add a few questions to the detail task, and then you don't need to have a really complex speaking task. It just needs to be appropriate for the text and for that group of learners. So I don't think it should take too much work.
Okay.
Yeah. Good luck with that. And as I say, I feel really bad being the bringer of bad news.
So you'll send all the assignments back
Sorry?
to everyone? You're going to send out the feedback to the assignments to everyone today or tomorrow?
It's going to be, soon.
Okay.
Soon. Half of the assignments have to be double marked, so I can't really send them out until the ones that are being double marked are double marked. Although I may send you yours, Anthony, just because it help you get on with it. Yours is a pass, Scott. So well done. Okay, listen. Have a good weekend, and good luck with planning for the next few lessons. And I'll speak to you all next week.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right. Cheers then. Bye.
Bye.